Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up because what happened on The View last week was absolutely nuclear, and it was the kind of television moment that people will be talking about for years. The day Tom Cruise completely and utterly destroyed Jane Fonda live on air in front of millions of viewers. Everyone knows The View likes to stir the pot with political talk, but nobody expected Tom Cruise to walk onto the stage as a surprise guest and within minutes turn the entire show into his own personal courtroom where Jane Fonda was the defendant and he was judge, jury, and executioner. The tension had been building for weeks ever since Jane Fonda appeared on the program wearing that now infamous t-shirt that mocked the tragic death of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk, the one that had a cartoon image with a cruel punchline that many found beyond distasteful. Social media exploded, conservatives were furious, and even some liberals called it a step too far, but Jane doubled down in interviews, claiming it was just satire and that people needed to lighten up. Fast forward to this particular episode. The producers apparently thought it would be great television to bring Tom Cruise on to promote the new Mission Impossible film, completely unaware that he had been quietly seething over Fonda's comments because, as everyone later learned, Cruise had privately considered Charlie Kirk a friend and had even donated to some of the same causes. The hosts Whoopi, Joy, Sunny, Sarah, and Alyssa were all smiles when Tom walked out. The audience gave him a standing ovation that lasted almost 2 full minutes. Women were screaming, men were cheering. It was pure Cruise mania, but the second he sat down you could see something was off. His famous smile was there but his eyes were ice cold, and when Joy Behar tried to steer the conversation toward the movie, Tom raised one hand and said, "Wait, before we talk about anything else, I think we need to address the elephant in the room." And he turned directly to Jane, who was guest co-hosting that day, and the entire studio went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop when Tom Cruise locked eyes with Jane Fonda and said, "Jane, I've respected you as an actress for decades. I grew up watching your films, but what you did with that shirt, what you said about Charlie Kirk after he was taken from us in such a horrible way, that wasn't activism, that wasn't satire, that was just cruel, and it was beneath you." Jane tried to laugh it off at first, the way she always does, rolling her eyes and saying, "Oh Tom, come on, it's just a shirt, people wear worse things to award shows, don't be so sensitive." But Tom wasn't having it. He leaned forward and his voice dropped to that dangerously calm tone he uses in movies right before the character explodes, and he said, "Sensitive? A young man is dead, gunned down doing what he believed in, leaving behind a wife and kids, and you thought it was funny to make a joke out of it on national television? Do you even hear yourself?" The audience started murmuring. Some people actually gasped, because nobody talks to Jane Fonda like that, especially not on The View where she's basically royalty. But Tom kept going. He brought up her Vietnam War protests and said, "You've spent 50 years telling everyone how we need empathy and compassion and how hate has no place in discourse, but the second someone disagrees with your politics you put on a shirt celebrating their tragedy. That's not woke hypocrisy at its absolute worst." And the crowd erupted, half cheering, half stunned. Joy Behar tried to jump in with her usual, "Okay everybody calm down," but Tom just held up a finger and said, "With all due respect Joy, let her answer. Let Jane explain to America why mocking a dead man is suddenly became progressive." And Jane's face went completely white because she realized this wasn't going away. Jane Fonda tried to pivot the way she always does, launching into her well-practiced speech about free speech and how conservatives want to silence strong women, but every time she opened her mouth Tom cut her off with facts, calm, surgical, devastating facts. He brought up specific quotes where she had condemned celebrities for making light of political violence in the past, then played a clip package. Yes, the producers actually rolled a clip package right there on the spot showing Jane on CNN in 2017 saying anyone who jokes about assassination attempts should be ashamed of themselves. And Tom just looked at her and said, "So which is it, Jane? Are we against violent rhetoric or only when it's convenient for your side?" The audience lost it. People were actually standing up and applauding Tom. Some woman in the front row shouted, "Tell her Tom," and Jane shot her a death stare, but it was too late. The narrative had flipped completely. Then Tom went for the jugular. He said, You've made an entire career out of telling younger actresses to speak truth to power, but the second someone speaks truth to you, you call them sensitive or misogynist. Newsflash, Jane. Criticizing a tasteless shirt isn't silencing you, it's holding you accountable the same way you've held everyone else accountable for 50 years. And then he dropped the line that broke the internet: maybe instead of fire in the streets next time try a little fire in your soul for basic human decency. And the studio absolutely exploded. Whoopi Goldberg had her head in her hands, Sunny Hostin looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her, and Alyssa Farah Griffin was nodding along because even she couldn't defend what Jane had done. At this point Jane Fonda tried to go full victim mode, saying Tom was bullying an 87-year-old woman and how dare he come on the show and attack her like this, but Tom just smiled that lethal cruise smile and said, "Jane, I'm not attacking your age. I'm attacking your actions, and if wearing a shirt mocking shirts about a dead man is what strong women do now, then maybe we need fewer strong women and more decent human beings." And the audience roared again, louder this time, because Tom had perfectly articulated what millions of people had been thinking but were too afraid to say. He then turned to the camera, breaking the fourth wall completely, and addressed the viewers at home. He said, "America, this is what happens when Hollywood only applauds one kind of opinion. People start thinking they can say or wear anything without consequence. Well, today there's a consequence. It's called being called out, and I'm happy to be the one to do it." Jane tried one last time to interrupt, raising her voice and saying, "You're a Scientologist, Tom. You have no room to lecture anyone on morality." And that was her fatal mistake because Tom just laughed, a genuine laugh, and said, "There it is, the left's favorite trick. When you can't defend your behavior, attack the person's religion." Classic. But guess what, Jane? I'm still waiting for you to defend the shirt. Still waiting. And she had nothing. Absolutely nothing. She just sat there looking small for the first time in decades while the audience chanted Tom, Tom, Tom. It was the kind of moment that gives you chills because you knew history was being made right there on daytime television. The hosts desperately tried to go to commercial, but Tom wasn't done. He said, "No, let's stay here, let's finish this, because the American people deserve to see what happens when someone finally stands up to the bullying." And he turned back to Jane and delivered the knockout blow. He said, "You've spent your life telling us to be better, to care about the little guy, to fight injustice, but the second the little guy disagrees with you he becomes fair game for mockery. That's not activism, Jane. That's elitism wearing activism's clothes, and maybe it's time you retired the act along with the shirt." And with that the audience gave him another standing ovation. People were crying, clapping, it was chaos. Security actually had to escort Jane off the stage because she looked like she was about to have a medical episode. Her hands were shaking, her face was red, and as she walked past Tom he didn't even look at her. He just kept talking to the audience about respect and decency and how Hollywood needs to wake up, pun intended, and the clip of Jane storming off while Tom received thunderous applause has already been viewed over 200 million times. Celebrities are choosing sides, some condemning Tom for being rude, others praising him for finally saying what needed to be said. But one thing is undeniable, Tom Cruise didn't just humiliate Jane Fonda. He exposed the double standard that has ruled Hollywood for far too long, and he did it with class, with facts, and without ever raising his voice above a calm, controlled level, which somehow made it even more devastating. In the days since the confrontation, Jane Fonda has gone completely silent on social media. Her publicist released a statement saying she was shocked by the ambush and that Tom's behavior was unhinged, but the public isn't buying it. Polls show 82% of viewers sided with Tom. Late-night hosts are afraid to touch the topic because they know they'll get the same treatment if they defend Jane. And Mission Impossible ticket pre-sales have tripled because people want to support the man who finally stood up. Even conservative outlets that usually hate Hollywood are calling Tom a hero, and there are rumors he's being invited to speak at events he would have never been considered for before. As for The View, ratings are through the roof, but ABC executives are reportedly furious because advertisers are nervous about being associated with the controversy. Whoopi Goldberg tried to walk back the episode by saying everyone got a little heated but we're all friends. But nobody believes that either. Because the footage speaks for itself. Jane Fonda looked broken, Tom Cruise looked 10 feet tall, and America got to see what real accountability looks like when someone with actual courage decides enough is enough. This wasn't just a television moment. It was a cultural shift. The day Hollywood's untouchable queen was finally dethroned by the last movie star who still believes in something bigger than box office numbers. And whether you love Tom or hate him, you have to admit one thing: when Tom Cruise decides to speak, the world listens. And this time Jane Fonda had no choice but to hear every single word, and she will be hearing those words for the rest of her career, because Tom didn't just humiliate her that day, he ended the era of celebrity immunity, and a new era of consequence just began. Thank you Tom Cruise for showing us what real strength looks like.